Alright, so here we go. The Rings of Zilfin, a history. It was long, long ago, some say before the Taurus mountains had thrust up from the Mother Earth. In that day, great wars raged between the forces of light and the forces of evil. The Zilfin wizards wrought 2 rings, which were worn by the first speaker at the Battle of Bihun. Each ring alone was ordinary, but the 2 rings together on the hand of one being were said to give supernatural force. After the forces of evil were beaten back at Bihun, the first speakers of Zilfin wore the rings as badge of their rank. The natural order, with its peace and prosperity, lasted even after the Zilfins mysteriously vanished. Then came Lord Dragos. His scroll declared the perversity of his purpose, and the strength of his hand was soon felt. His demons he placed under the command of Zoman, himself a tower of demonic darkness. Suffering spread through Batnik. There was now no trace of the Zilfins, as though the foul incantations of Dragos had swept them from the land. Night-flying dragon birds, illets, guzus, drahins, and other plagued once peaceful forests. Those caught in the open had no chance. Even the industrious and merry elves, who formerly lived in hollow trees deep in the forest, now fled to more remote forests for greater safety. Travel and trade virtually ceased. If the next village could not be reached in daylight, it could not be reached alive. Even during the day, goblins raided and robbed at will. Okay, I don't think I totally get that. There seems to be some Zilfin wizards wrought two rings. Okay, so I guess this reminds me of the Lord of the Rings. The 2 rings were wrought and worn by the first speaker. After the first forces were beaten back, the speakers of the Zilfin wore the rings as badges. Okay. Lord Dragos, I assume he's the big bad guy here. He had demons placed under his command, under the command of Zoman. Okay, so he must be kind of his first in command, I'd assume. And looks like he invaded the land, and he caused a great scourge on the land. Looks like he made the elves and other things flee. Goblins raided. Okay. Alright, let's move on. However, even Dragos was not able to subdue the monks of Batnik. An ancient spell preserved them, so some news was carried from kingdom to kingdom by the monks. They were the only segment of society not totally isolated. Administration of the provinces came under the Zorlims, goblin monks who extorted gold, valuables, even food and clothing from the helpless populace. Any town or collection of huts that was slow to cooperate was left a smoldering pyre. Besieged within their castles, the former kings of the 3 realms were defenseless, hardly able to keep themselves, much less help the peasantry. The beatings wore on, until it seemed the people were almost senseless. Few lights shone in this dark age, like flickering torches on a wind-swept moor. The forces of evil neared their final victory. Okay. Alright, the people were pretty much beaten up. Everything was left in ruin. The evil forces had finally nearly committed their victory. Alright, the Castle Graz. 2 prizes still eluded Lord Dragos, however, the Rings of Zilfin and the treasure of Fulgarsh. Aside from these, the paltry resistance of the monks of Batnik and rumors of the Zilfins not marred the ascendancy of Dragos. Okay, so there were 2 treasures he needed, the Rings of Zilfin and the treasure of Fulgarsh. So basically those are the things standing in his way for total domination. As to the rings, when Dragos first arrived at Castle Graz, hiding place of the rings, he had not even been able to gain entrance. First, the castle was placed high atop Mount Grazdring. Okay. So this castle is atop this mountain, what he cannot gain access to. There, secluded from the world, connected with no road or trail, it could only be reached by flying on the back of the giant Anka birds. How the Zilfins had traveled there was never known. Flying on an Anka was not only dangerous, but difficult to arrange. Only elves knew how to summon these birds. There was a mysterious communication between the busy elves and the most independent and free-spirited birds. Thus visitors to Graz were rare, which was all for the best. Zilfin courtesy demanded that extensive hospitality be shown to every visitor, and the first speaker of Castle Graz did not have extra time for social life. Alright, the fate of Darmag. Alright, who is Darmag? After the first speaker, the next best-known inhabitant of the place had been Darmag, the guard. Darmag was a creature of unknown origin, resembling a huge pumpkin, his roots dug deep into the soil, and he was more like a vegetable than a human, or a Zilfin. His skin was like the bark of a tree, hard and durable. Though he appeared to be a plant, he possessed both intelligence and magic. Further, he could surround himself with a wall of pure energy that no one could penetrate. His age was neither known nor guessed. Some said he was on the grounds when the Zilfins built the place. At any rate, he was stationed at the main gate as sentinel and guard, and he and the castle had become known as one. Okay, so he was kind of like the guard dogs of the Zilfin. He was a good creature, huge pumpkin creature, vegetable creature, and looks like he guarded the great mountain where the castle Graz was located. Okay, the day of the Zilfins disappeared, a sadness grew in Darmag's heart. The elves who sometimes came to visit would offer to move him to one of their forests where he could have some company, but he refused. Graz was his home. Okay. When Lord Dragos and his followers appeared, Darmag refused to give way. Despite all the efforts of Dragos, Darmag held firm. When the cunning Dragos ordered Chuba, that sounds like Chewbacca, ordered Chuba, the narcotic, to be brought. Okay, well, it's not a person, it's a drug or a plant of some sort. The Chuba leaves were squeezed and their juice poured into the ground near Darmag. Since he took his nourishment from the earth, his roots absorbed the drug. His defenses slowly failed until he fell into a heavy sleep, so Dragos penetrated the castle. Thereafter, Chuba juice was regularly poured into the soil, and Darmag was reduced to a drugged slave. He would follow any order of Dragos, begging for more Chuba. Such was the fate of Darmag. Okay, so it looks like this guy got totally screwed over by Lord Dragos. He's kind of his slave now. Search for the rings. Once inside, Dragos rushed to search for the rings of Zilfin. They opened a door whose hinges had not creaked in centuries. Breaking the spells, he found a small black chest on a low stone altar. Inside, one ring. Only one. Dragos flew into a rage. His plans were thwarted. He climbed to the uppermost tower, where he hurled thunderbolts and storms onto all parts of Botanique. Crops were ruined, huts smashed, floods unleashed. Yet the other ring was not found, and eventually the Wizards of Light brought back the sun. Okay, so he's only got one ring, and obviously, as we read above, you've got to have both rings for the power to work. Okay, the second prize. And I remember the second prize was the treasure. Okay, the second prize that had eluded Dragos was the treasure of Fulgarsh. Of all the kings of this land, Fulgarsh was the most known for cruelty. Okay, so Fulgarsh was a man, a king. Okay. As his time grew near, Fulgarsh was possessed by the fear that his gold would surely pass into the hands of another. As he grew deathly ill, a giant dragon descended from the sky. Bogum, dragon of the legend, announced himself with cracks and hisses and the scraping of scales across the floor. Through a window he spoke at length with the dying man. Then, astounding all, Fulgarsh arose and led the beast into his treasure room. Okay, so this guy's about to die, and a dragon shows up. And he leads the beast into his treasure room. Moments later, the great chest was chained to the dragon's back, and away he flew. As Bogum disappeared, he was heard to say, "Mortal eyes will never again see this treasure." Exhausted, Fulgarsh died shortly after. Where did the treasure go? Dragos never found it. On many an evening, as the common folk gathered around their fire, the talk would turn to the fabled treasure of Fulgarsh. Okay, so this treasure, obviously, um, how much you want to bet this treasure is guarded by this dragon, and we've got to go find this dragon to get the treasure. A final magical word. Wizards, witches, and sorcerers are often thought to be the same, but they are not. All these names indicate a high level of skill, the ability to control the forces of nature to some degree, but not in the same way. Wizardry is mastery of the mind. Wizards have little use for herbs, powders, or potions. They usually carry a staff carved of rare wood and rely on runes and prayers for their power. With control of their mind, they can then control their bodies, and sometimes even stop the aging process. Some of the best-known botanique wizards, such as Eklund, are thought to be hundreds of years old. Witches are learned in the use of herbs and plants to effect charms, curses, and poisons. Their power, though strong, is below that of wizards. To an extent, they too can lengthen their lives. Most of their longevity potions do make them uglier and more gnarled. Of all the witches, only one, Zara, claims to have found the source of eternal life. Zara, the eternal sorceress, lives in a temple of Begonia. There she spends her days working deeper and deeper into the art of witchcraft, aided by apprentices and servants. She is no friendlier than any other witches. She does nothing without the expectation of payment. This then is botanique. May the forces of light be with you. Okay, so that's the backstory. Interesting story, and very cliche though. A lot of it's cliche, but a twist there. 2 rings. That's kind of interesting. And a treasure. The other prize is a great treasure. I want to take a look at the map for a second here. If we can find it, I want to get an idea of what exactly we're going to be facing in this world. Okay, here we go. Let's zoom out a little bit here. Okay, the rings of Zilfin. This is the whole world. And I don't know if you can see that, the whole thing here. Now these look like they are city-states or countries. I'm not sure. Somaria, Begonia, Doloria. 3 parts of the empire. Looks like it's separated by the mountain range here. We've got marshes, we've got forests, plains, deserts, big mountains. Now they talked about a big castle in the mountains. Graz. Now that sounds like a very important place. Now that's Durheim. That's not it. Aha! I bet you that's what we're looking for. This castle in the mountains looks like that's got to be Graz. Those big mountains there. Okay, so it's got some little cities here. All right, so let's go through the introduction here. This is, I suppose, what could be called the beginning of our journey in this land of botanique. Introduction. The pale moonlight shone dimly into the dark recesses of my room, silhouetting the feminine form before the open window. I could see her but faintly. Her beauty, regal bearing, and strength had been worn by the passage of time, but not obliterated. Here stood my long-dead mother. I rose to stand before her, in my 18th year, full of pride and strength, secure in the knowledge of my special abilities. The realm of botanique lay beyond. Okay, so this is in first person. This appears to be the character which I will be playing. And this looks like his mother. His mother's come back to visit him, his dead mother. Okay.